week on Overdrive, we're pitting the Kia Syros, Skoda Kylaq and Mahindra 3XO against each other in a detailed car comparison covering everything from design to comfort, engine performance, while also reviewing the practical and approachable TVS Orbiter EV scooter.
Hello and welcome to Overdrive. I am Soini. That when it comes to choosing your perfect ride, you obviously want to pick one which suits your style as well as your needs, right? So we decided to pick three of the most popular compact SUVs, the Skoda Kylaq, the Kia Syros as well as the Mahindra 3XO, to find out just how they stack up against each other in terms of the styling, in terms of the cabin layout, features, tech, boot space, of course. Let's take a look.
It's quite simple. If you want to sell cars successfully in India, you have to have a sub 4 meter SUV in your lineup. There are 14 of these cars that you can buy right now in the country, and these three are the newest. You have the Skoda Kylaq and the Mahindra XUV 3XO. If you want a bit of fun in the mix, but if you want something smart and sensible, then maybe the Kia Syros might be for you. But anyway, which of these are the best? That's what we are trying to find out today. While all of these cars are up to 3995 mm long, it's the Kia Syros that seems to take up the most space on the road. Its polarizing shape has something to do with this. It's the tallest car here at 1680 mm. The boxy, slab-sided look is intended to be practical, but the details mean that you will have an opinion on it. The Skoda Kylaq sits on the other end of the spectrum, being the shortest and narrowest car here. It looks the most compact, but is possibly one of the more proportionate sub 4 meter cars we've seen in a while. As before, the Mahindra 3XO is your best bet if you want to make a strong initial impression. It's the widest car here at 1821 mm, and it's the most convincing with its big SUV charms of the three car here. Now, whenever you look at sub 4 meter SUVs, you always have this thought that maybe you're being shortchanged in terms of boot space, and in that regard, we have come quite far. For example, the Kia now makes 465 litres, which is quite large. But I have to say that with the Kylaq's 446 litres, it's a bit more usable in the day-to-day. Yeah, the Syros is a bit lower, but this has a wider opening. The space is much more usable. Whereas in the Syros, if you notice, with the seat being pushed back so far, you can eat into your boot space quite a bit. And it's also not as deep as in the Kylaq. Now, for the 3XO, it was always never really known for its boot space, and that continues. With 346 litres, it's quite a bit behind these other two. So you have a high lip, and while the space is without too many intrusions, it still has quite a high floor. So if you are carrying a full family's worth of luggage, you will have to do some tight packing in the Mahindra. In keeping with its theme, the 3XO has the most ground clearance of the lot at 201 mm. The Kia Syros and Kylaq are not too far behind and have 189 mm. As soon as you step inside the Syros, you feel like you're in a much spacious, much larger car. And that's largely down to these window sills. As you can see, they're very low. The shape of the window itself. So, of course, it gives you that sense of openness, the high roof, but it also aids visibility. So, while driving this in traffic, it's one of the easier cars here to sort of navigate. With the Kylaq, you sit in a more cocooned, sporty way, which doesn't help visibility in traffic as much as the other two. The seating position is not quite as SUV-like as the other two, but for those of you who like driving, the Skoda delivers with that more connected feel. Now, whenever you have a Skoda in a comparison test like this, you would expect it to absolutely ace the kind of quality that you have in the cabin. And with the Kylaq, it's almost that case. And as you would expect, the fit, finish and quality is right up there. But the Syros takes it a step above. And that's in the details. While you do have that heft and solidity that you have in a Skoda, the Syros in some of the details, like for example, these buttons of the steering wheels or this sort of climate control panel, everything is physical and very tactile and very high quality in the Syros, but here you notice that it's not quite that easy to use or that satisfying. Even with the Syros at hand, you get the sense that the 3XO could be from a segment higher. Its wide cabin and big seats make you feel luxurious in a way. There's also way more soft surfaces here on the dash and doors. The stitching is a nice touch and works with a light contrast cabin. But this doesn't quite have the modernity or plush look of the other two cars. The plastic and textures don't feel as well executed in the other two, although the car seems consistently put together. The gloss black panels are prone to scratches, and the switches, though chunky, have a flimsy feel to them. Now, all three give you fairly decent sized door bins, especially the 3XO. The door bins are quite large, but with the Syros, just the way everything is arranged, it feels much easier to access. You can put two bottles here easily. This space over here with the push type sort of hidden cup holders, there's a lot of space for you to put your knick-knack. Same with the charger here and the small cubby here. The 3XO doesn't have much in the way of usable space in the center console, and the Skoda has good cubbies but not quite as smartly done as the Kia. The Kylaq is the most difficult to interact with on the move with its capacitive panels. The Mahindra and Kia have all the physical controls you might need, but the Kia feels the most natural to interact with its layout and settings. The 3XO holds its own with its 10.25-inch touchscreen. It's slightly larger than the 10.1-inch unit in the Kylaq, but has a more consistent theme to it. Can be a bit clunky with its responses and layout in relation to the Kylaq, but the Mahindra seems to have worked on this over time. You get a vast degree of connected features which the Kylaq doesn't quite have, although both give you inbuilt navigation. The Syros gets Kia's latest screen package and is the largest one here at 12.3 inches. It's also the most responsive with the richest display and intuitive layout. It also gets a small 5-inch climate display that is largely redundant and blanked out of view by the steering wheel. Thankfully, the Kia now also gets wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, bringing it to par with rivals. The Skoda system still works the best, firing up the quickest and most reliably. All of these cars also get a driver's display where again the Syros impresses. It's the largest and most legible with logical menus. The Mahindra is a slightly smaller one at 10.25 inch. Its dark themes and small fonts don't quite make it as easy to use, and it could have had less complicated menus. The Skoda is a bit behind the others. It only gets an 8-inch display that is quite configurable but not very easily so. You have a lot of blank space around the displays that now feels out of place in this segment. Now with a wheelbase of 2600 mm and 1821 mm of width, the 3XO is the largest car here in many respects, especially when you consider the back seat. So if you had to carry 3 people at the back, this is the best car for you, especially considering how the bench is shaped. It's the flattest, very typical of Mahindra, so it may not be the most comfortable over a long duration, but it will be the most practical in that sense. Now in terms of knee and headroom, this is very, very close to the Syros. Although again, the Syros with its high roof and those large windows gives you a more open feel in some respects. And the Kylaq is some way behind them, although it, like I mentioned earlier, it has a longer wheelbase than the Syros. The way it's packaged is quite compact, and 3 people together in the back seat of the Kylaq will be a bit difficult. The Kylaq is the best space for you if you travel 4-up often with the supportive seat cushioning. The Syros has more contouring than the Mahindra, which also holds you in place better, even though 3 abreast here is not as comfortable as in the 3XO. The Kylaq's dark cabin and lack of panoramic sunroof seems to show itself the most in the back seat, although it does mean that the headroom is quite good.
Well, it's time for us to take our first break here on the show, but don't go anywhere because on the other side, the 3 compact SUVs will be pitted against each other in terms of the engine, performance, ride quality, handling and pricing. Welcome back here with us on Overdrive. Now, we decided to pit the Skoda Kylaq against the Kia Syros and the Mahindra 3XO, not only in terms of the cabin space and the styling, but we also wanted to see how they stack up in terms of the engine performance, the practicality, the ride quality, handling, and of course the pricing. So let's see which one gives you the most bang for your buck.
Now the big advantage that the Mahindra 3XO has on paper with its engine, of course it's a slightly bigger engine, it's a 1.2 litre compared to the 1 litre and the other two, but with 130 PS and the 230 Nm, it shows almost immediately as you set off. The Syros makes a bit more power than the Skoda, while the Skoda has a slight torque advantage, making 178 Nm against the Kia's 172. The Kylaq and Mahindra get the same Aisin-sourced 6-speed automatic, while the Syros uses the familiar 7-speed dual clutch. It's got a sense of urgency and peppiness that the other two here don't have. So while the Syros still has that nice linear pull just as you start off, the Mahindra gives you an added sense of urgency. Now with the Kylaq, you have that strong crawl function that was always a trait of these MQB A0 Iron cars, so that's been kept as it is. You have to work the Kylaq a bit, which can be a good thing sometimes, but both give you that sense of engagement and excitement that previously you might have wanted in a fast, fun hatchback. As for the Syros, it's the mellow of the 3 cars here. It could do with a bit more go before the turbo spools, but it has a simple linear power delivery that is practical and easy to get used to. In keeping with its convenience-focused theme, you get drive and traction modes in the Syros, but no sport mode for the gearbox. The unit also seems to be tuned best for calmer driving despite being a DCT. It takes a while to respond to a heavy dollop of throttle, but comes through with smooth, clean shifts at path throttle. Surprisingly, the Mahindra doesn't get a more aggressive gearbox map. A sport mode like this would have exploited the engine's potential further. This shows up more in context with the Kylaq. The Mahindra seems to have the more responsive tune of the Ison box, but with Skoda adding a sport mode to the gearbox, there's a lot more being extracted from the engine. The shifts are sharper and quicker in this mode and quite responsive for a torque converter via the paddles, another bit of equipment that the Mahindra lacks. Now when the Kylaq came out and we drove it first, we were quite sure that this could well be one of the better handling SUVs in the segment, and driving these three cars together sort of proves that. It has thoughtful handling sort of character that if you like driving, it'll really appeal to you. So you notice with the steering itself, it is still light, the other two are lighter still, so in this competition it feels a bit heftier, but in general terms it's quite light, but you have a good deal of directness and control. So on a winding road like we are on right now, this sort of gives you the most confidence as you sort of tuck into a corner. It must be said that Mahindra has done quite a good job in coming reasonably close to the Kylaq. You still can get a smooth flow going in 3XO, especially with that very potent engine, but you do realize that when the car is loaded up into a corner, maybe it's not quite as sure-footed and as fluid in its motions as the Kylaq. The steering could be a bit more communicative in these situations too. The steering modes add heft but don't improve directness. Now having said that, the Syros, it was never really meant to appeal to the enthusiast, and it shows in the way it drives. You do notice that it has quite a bit of body roll with that high sort of roof design. Now as long as it keeps speeds in check, it's fine, you will keep making progress, but if you enter a corner a bit quicker or at speeds that you would do in either the 3XO or the Kylaq, you do notice that the car seems to really not like it. It has quite a sharp sort of movement in its roll, which can sometimes catch you off guard. Now the steering in the Syros is also quite light, which makes it a great help in the city, but again, if you want some kind of engagement from that car, then you really don't feel that connection. Now you might be thinking that with the Syros and its very family-focused sort of approach, that might be the most comfortable car here when the road gets rough. But that's not really the case. It's the Mahindra that seems to isolate you from our road surface the best. So on a high-speed highway sort of cruise, there's really not much to separate all three of them. I think the Kylaq does it the best, the Syros a little bit less, and the 3XO a bit below the other two. At rupees 16.80 lakh, the Kia Syros is pricey. You get a ton of equipment for this, but it's C-segment money, and the Syros doesn't quite have the driving chops to justify that. It is still by far the most premium space here and should be the car for you if you will spend a lot of time in the back seat. The Kylaq handily undercuts the other two cars here at rupees 13.99 lakh. It may be lacking the space and creature comforts of the others, but the smart driving dynamics and proportionate styling help it stand out. The Mahindra 3XO is still pricey at rupees 15.80 lakh, but seems to be the best all-round package. It has that potent motor, a good features and safety package, and feels good enough on the road to satisfy the widest spectrum of buyers.
Well, it's time to head into our final break here on the show, but don't go anywhere because on the other side we tell you all about TVS's latest practical electric scooter for the Indian market.